Right. Allow me to introduce our next speaker, who is the PMI Canberra Australia Chapter President. Yannick Arekion is a global digital transformation leader with over 25 years of experience working with C-level executive with broad and deep technical background. His passion is to help organizations achieve their business outcomes, become more productive, effective, and increase their customers and stakeholders' user experience by using technology, agility, and good governance. Please join me in welcoming Yannick, who will give an expose on being agile, overdoing agile. Yannick, handing over to you. Let me know if you're able to share or if there is any trouble in sharing your screen.
I'm having some trouble sharing my screen, so it says disabled as a host.
Can you just try again now? I think it should work.
Brilliant, thank you.
Wonderful. So welcome, Yannick, and please, you can now proceed.
Thank you, Kasturi. So can you see my slides?
Yes, works on my side. It's good.
Okay, thank you. So good morning, everyone. I would like to thank Mr. Aaron Poligadu and PMI Mauritius for the opportunity to present to this conference today. And the topic that I will be talking on is how an organization having an agile mindset is really critical in an organization succeeding in the future. So we'll start to talk about the history of Agile. So it's really important to understand where does Agile come from and why are we doing Agile, what we call doing Agile. Then we'll look at what being Agile means, and then we will look at some tips that I've acquired through working with many organizations on how to help your organization to achieve greater agility. So from this conference today, so we all in agreement that we live in a VUCA world, so where everything is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguity. So there are several factors that are facing in our world, so where organization needs to face every day that they have to react to. Some of them are our customers. So when we look at an organization today, whether it is a private organization or a government organization, they are facing a lot of pressure from their customers. So their customers want to be able to interact with them using different channels, using a website, using a call center, and now using a mobile application. Interaction with our customers, they expect more and more from us. They expect us to be able to react to their needs in a timely manner, 24/7, 7 days a week. So that's creating a lot of pressure for the organization. Now living in an information world, so we are other challenges that organizations are facing are security. So we really need to make sure that our systems are secure. So our data for our customers is well protected. And that has given rise to a lot of legislation that we need to adhere to when we make changes to our systems. So we've got the GDPR that everyone knows about. So in Australia, we have a Freedom of Information Act. And we've also got WTAG to make sure that our systems are accessible by impaired people. And now we also live in a world where everything is global. So competition is not only local, but globally. So we really need to make sure that we are on top of what we are doing, otherwise we will stay behind. So these are some of the really main changes that organizations are facing. And more importantly is the advancement in technology. So advancement in technology has allowed us for new opportunities. We've seen the growth of data in an organization now that's becoming really a big challenge to manage our data, so the growth of our data, and also to look at the changes in hardware and systems that are becoming more and more complex. And more recently, so we saw a big drastic disruption in our life. So where people are now having to work from home, having to have homeschooling, and most of the business transactions are being done online, which is COVID-19. So I was looking in April last year where Satya Nadella, so the CEO of Microsoft, he saw 200 million Microsoft Teams meeting in one day. So that was 4.1 billion. So these numbers are really amazing, mind-blowing. So that has created change in an organization, so in the way we live today. So this is why Agile has been growing in the industry. So because the methods that we need to be able to respond to change, so the traditional methods were no longer applicable. And it was not adapted as well in most of the circumstances, not in all circumstances, but in most of the circumstances. So this is why we've seen Agile growing in every organization today. So what we've seen as well is that when we need to respond to market conditions, things that we used to deliver in years, customers are expecting it to be delivered in months. Services that you use to provide in months, we need to be able to provide that in weeks. So there's a massive shift in the services that we provide and also in the speed that we need to be able to deliver those services so that we can adapt really quickly to the market condition. So in order to understand what is Agile, while everyone is doing Agile, so let's go back to 2001. So in 2001, there were 17 people. So they were mostly software developers that were working in the industry in different organizations. And they already developed different frameworks. So like Scrum, Extreme Programming, DSDM, and they decided to meet in a ski resort in Stobart in Utah. Why did they want to meet? Is because there was a lot of change was happening in the industry. So the changes were we were moving from the mainframe to what we call the mid-range. So there was new programming language like Smalltalk, so which was object-oriented, and that started to have a shift in the way we were building software. So the traditional waterfall model with a tradition that comes from the engineering field was no longer applicable. So they wanted to meet so that they can discuss about the learnings and about the challenges that they were facing. So they spent 3 days in the resort and they were bouncing ideas between all of them. And what was the outcome after these 3 days was the Agile Manifesto. So what the Agile Manifesto is about, it's about 4 values. Individuals and interactions over process and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. So what does that tell us is basically, it is important to have processes and tools, but it's more important to have individuals' interactions. It's more important to interact between us than to have very rigid process and tools. Having a lot of documentation, but nothing that's working is not really a good outcome for the organization. So it's more important to have a working software than a lot of documentation. So there's a myth that if we are doing agile, we don't need we don't need to write documentation, we don't need to have processes, but that's not true. So processes are really important, documentation are really important. We need to have a plan, but to be able to respond to change and to interact with each other and have something that's working. So these are more important. So the outcome of that meeting was these 4 values and 12 principles. So some of these principles also: working software is a primary measure of progress. Agile processes promote sustainable development. So if I want to summarize all this in a nutshell, it's about reducing waste, working as a team, self-organizing team, constant delivery, and quality. So this is what they come up to in 2001. So from 2001 to today, we've seen a proliferation of agile in most organizations everywhere. So in most organizations that I talked to today, they're all having agile being implemented in some forms, some shape or forms in their organization. So it's worth about $3 trillion today. So that's the market of agile. So since 2020, so in 1 year, so last year, so from the 15th State of Agile report, we've seen the adoption of Agile has skyrocketed. So from 37% to 86% for software development, and also IT projects 26% to 60%, and also non-IT projects has doubled. So it's really increasing. So everyone is doing Agile in any shape or form. But what I'm seeing as well, and what we are seeing, is that the value is not being maximized. So we're not getting really the maximum value out of being agile. And why is this? It's because these teams and the organization has not fully embraced an agile mindset. So what exactly do we mean by the agile mindset? So this is the way we think. So the way we think is described by these 4 values we've shown before and the 12 principles from the Agile Manifesto. And that is manifested by all the different practices. Like we have Scrum, we have Extreme Programming, and we have now the Scale Agile framework, which is SAFe. So I want to give you some examples now on what do we mean by doing agile without the mindset. So I've broken it into 3 different tiers, different levels. So we look at an enterprise, and in an enterprise, we have a group of people, so which is a team, and inside the team, we'll have many individuals. So when we look at an enterprise, so that's starting to adopt agile. So the first thing that they do, they'll be sending everyone on a training. So everyone will be trained to become a Scrum Master, to become SAFe engineers, but the organization still remains the same. So what we mean by that is that the executive is still requesting the same types of report. They want to have a full project plan before the project starts. They want to be able to still keep control on the team. So they don't want to empower the team. They don't want to change the way they operate. So they still want to be able to keep tight control, and they don't want to become servant leaders. So Agile promotes servant leadership, empowering the team and small iterations. We also look at the project management office that is still operating in the same way. So we don't really have an Agile PMO, and there's no change in the structure of our organization. So if we don't have any change, we will have the same output. Now, when we look at a team level, the organization has sent the whole team in a training, so in an agile training, and when we start to form our team, we will have a product owner, we'll have a Scrum Master, and we'll have our development team. but the product owner is still busy doing his existing job. So he's absent. He's not really committed into delivering value to the organization. So he's still trying to build a really massive solution without thinking of an MVP. So there's some unrealistic expectation of what we are going to be able to produce later on. So on the development side of things, we look at developers, they're still cherry picking work. So in Agile, it promotes to have a clear backlog and to have a sprint backlog. But what we often say is that developers in a team will be cherry picking the work that they want to do. They won't be following the rules, and they'll still be working the same way that they were doing before. But they're saying, yes, we are Agile. We have a product owner. We have a sprint. So we have a Scrum Master. The next level that we've looked at is that an individual, when we look at the individual, they don't really believe in Agile. So they went onto the training, but they still think that I don't really believe in it. I'm still going to carry on the way that I used to do my work. They don't want to change. They're reluctant to change, and they don't want to embrace a team spirit. So Agile is about working as a team with each other. We've got people working really, really long hours. So Agile promotes sustainable pace. So we don't want people to be working really extremely long hours because quality will be reduced. Some people doesn't want to share their work. So we still have people who really like to keep their knowledge by themselves. And also we look at the behavior among different team members. So we have a lot of people that doesn't really respect working as a team. So lack of emotional intelligence. So is Agile having a daily stand-up? We all know about Agile. We have stand-ups, we have Kanban boards. So, but that doesn't have any value. So I was working in an organization many years ago when I was looking at their daily stand-up where they had about 30 people. They were spending about half an hour talking about most of the topics that they were talking was not relevant to the actual work. So if we do a very simple calculation, so for a team of 8 people, spending 15 minutes in a stand-up, that would be equivalent to 500 hours of lost productivity per year if they don't really focus on the actual work that they are doing. What I've seen as well very often is having retrospective. So this is a really important tool in Agile. So it is a really important ceremony where we will learn about the process. So what went well, what did not go well, we will use that opportunity to allow us to inspect and adapt what we are doing and improve on the way we work, on the way we operate. But very often we will have a retrospective because we need to have a retrospective and we won't be able to learn. We're not learning from this ceremony. So we will take some action items from there, but nothing will be done. The other aspect as well is where we look at a team building software in an agile way, but the software never goes to production. So what's the point of building a software really quickly in increments, but the other part of our organization, the operational team, is not ready to be able to deploy the software in production. So it's not really being agile. So we have all these different aspects of a team, the organization saying, yes, we are agile, we are doing agile, but really are this giving us value? So this is a very interesting slide that I was looking at when I was reading the 15 State of Agile report by Digital AI. And what I realized here is that 19% of the people in an organization, so what they did the survey, had no idea about what framework they were using. So that shows clearly that communication within organization are lacking. So people are doing things without really understanding or knowing why they are doing it. So they're just doing things. They know, yes, I'm doing agile, but am I really agile? What am I doing it? And why am I doing it for? So Now, I'm going to talk a bit about how to achieve greater agility in your organization. So the first recommendation will be organization needs to adopt agile values. So how do they do that? We really need to look at what are the values of our organization. And when we adopt a framework, whether it is SAFe, whether it is Scrum, whether it is Lean, so we need to really make sure that the organization values are aligned. So if organization values are not aligned, it won't work properly. The next thing that we need to do, we need to have a ground rules. So it's very important to have a ground rules that will define the way we work. And having an enterprise ground rules is very important. So that will allow consistency across different teams. Otherwise, each of these teams will still work in silo, and we won't have a cadence of having all these things working together. And this can be driven by the PMO. This is where we can see a shift from a traditional PMO to an agile PMO. Leadership is very, very important. So leadership needs to transform from either boss or current leaders to what we call servant leadership. So they need to have a shared vision of where we want the organization to go. And they need to be able to motivate the staff. They need to be able to empower the staff through sponsorship and really selling their ideas and bringing the whole organization with them. So when the organization has created their values, their principles, and all the ground rules, they need to be able to make sure that everyone buying to that, everyone embrace these ground rules so that they all work together. So it will be a big family, a big team. So if they are not able to turn themselves into servant leadership, this is where we'll have a lot of disjoint teams working against each other. So now when we look at the next level, so in the individual teams, they need to adopt new ways of working. So by becoming agile, by having an agile mindset in the organization, we need to change our behavior. We need to change the way we operate amongst ourselves and also within our organization. So the first thing is that we need to really embrace the values. So when the organization has adopted some values, we need to really commit to them. We need to be able to sign to these values and adhere to these values. The next thing that we need to do as part of a team, we need to be able to champion these values. Once we've adopted these values, we are starting to think in an agile way. We need to be able to adopt it and champion it across the organization, influence other teams. So we need to be able to ensure that we are successful in a team. And as a team, we will be treating everyone with respect and also ensure that we have quality in everything that we do. So other ways of working that we need to really look at is an MVP. So it's very important to look at the minimum viable product, because what tends to happen is that we have a development team when they start to build a product, but it takes a long time. So we want to be able to deliver something really quickly. And in order to do that, we want to be able to have principles that will help us to define an MVP. Very often we don't have any principles, and the product will take a long time to be delivered. Shifting from product services to customer centric. So in the traditional software development methodologies, we used to have a use case when we think in terms of a system. A system needs to be able to add a customer, needs to be able to update a customer. But now we are looking at a customer centric. We look at persona. What is the customer trying to do? What are we providing to the customer? So we need to be able to shift that mindset from a system to a customer. So that's really critical ways of working that a team needs to adopt when they are looking at building a system, building a solution, building a product or a service. We need to think in terms of a customer-centric solution, rather than a piece of software that the customer doesn't want or doesn't need or is not usable. Having a product owner and having a Scrum Master is very, very important, but they need to be dedicated. So we've very often seen that a Scrum Master, a product owner, they are very well overallocated. They have multiple jobs. So that doesn't help. So it's very important in an organization to have a product owner which is dedicated, and also the Scrum Master, but doesn't do multiple jobs. The product owner must trust the team. So what we've seen as well very often is that we don't have a trust. So Agile promotes trust between team. So we need to really make sure that in the team, so we have a product owner that's really trusting that the team will deliver what's right for the customer and what has been directed by the product owner. Retrospective is a very, very important tool that I mentioned before. So it's one of the ceremony of Scrums that we use. Is what we need to do. We need to really to understand the value of retrospective. So very often I've seen teams, so they have an iteration, but the retrospective doesn't occur. So what happened in that circumstance, we don't really learn. So we don't use that opportunity to learn about what we can improve. So we need to make sure that this happens every time, and it happens in a safe place where each team member is able to really share their feelings, to share what they think about the dynamics of a team. And these needs to be able to be addressed immediately, because if it's not addressed, we won't be able to learn, we won't increase our velocity, and we won't really provide value to the organization. So how do we approach that? So I'll give you 10 tips. So first, it needs to be driven from the top, and also we need to start from the bottom. So top down and bottom up approach. So with the executive championing it, with executive having a really clear vision where the organization needs to go. We need to develop values. It's very important to have values, and the values needs to be aligned with the agile values. So once we have these values, and then we can start to change our culture. We spoke about the culture. So I've seen a lot of presentations today in the conference when we were talking about culture. This is what will change our culture. We'll have a new culture. We'll start to change our mindset. We start with one team. It's very important. So agile is not a sprint, as we say. It's not something that we can really do quickly. We need to start with one team. We need to learn from it through retrospective, and then we start to build more and more teams. Hiring very experienced agile coach is very, very important, and also Scrum Master, so that they can start to influence the culture and start to change the way we operate. And having good change management is very important, because we need to change the way the organization works. So we really need to look at, okay, how do we change the whole organization so that we don't disrupt the organization too much. When we build our first team, it's very important to look at team members who will embrace the values. So people who has an open mind, so people who really want to learn, people who are motivated, and people who are cross-functional. So we don't really want to build our first team with people who are not suited for agile. So it's really important to really look at, okay, who will make my first team successful, so that that whole team can become a champion and continue to influence the organization. So once we have a really good team, so that's working, that's performing, the next step is to go and build a second team. So we build a second team around the lessons learned. Then we'll slowly start to align the whole organization around that rhythm. So we've seen DevOps. So we are also now seeing what is DevSecOps, which is the development working with security and operations. So in the future, we'll see all these departments working together in sync. So starting a community of practice is also very important. So that will allow the team, the whole organization, to share their learning. So starting a community of practice on Agile is really good practice that I would encourage you to take in your organization. And another critical aspect as well is to be able to follow and master the process before tailoring practices. So in Agile, so we talk about Shuhari. So this is where that comes from martial arts, where you need to really understand what you're doing. So understand the process, follow the rules, and then afterwards you start to make the rules. So that's very important before you start to tailor any practices that you will be implementing in your organization. And lastly, really use the retrospective. So having a retrospective in a short iteration, this is what allows you to increase your velocity in your organization for what you do. So that's really, really critical. So really look at retrospective very seriously. So once we've implemented all these changes in our organization, this is where we'll see a change in culture, a shift in the mind. So by being agile, so we will have a lot of benefits for the organization on different levels. So in an enterprise level, we will look at reducing the risk of failure because we are doing things in short iteration. If we fail, we will fail early. We can adapt quickly, and then we can really make sure that we will be successful in the future. We can respond to change faster. We'll be able to increase the customer retention and then accelerate delivery so that we are more profitable. On a team level, we see the team becoming more and more productive. We will see the quality of their work really improving, and the mindset will be more innovative. We will see a team that really want to innovate, that are willing to take more risks. So taking more risks will give better product because we need to put some guardrails of our organization. The servant leaders of our organization will put some guardrails to really empower the team. So that will improve collaboration and then also increase the transparency that will be happening in an organization. At a personal level, we see more satisfaction. So the job satisfaction in the organization will be increased, hence work-life balance as well. So that's really good at every level of an organization. So an enterprise level, a team level, and also at an individual level. So what will be the result? So it will be an organization that will have a capability to respond to market demands really quickly. And then they will be able to develop innovative products and services that will delight their customers. So hence also reducing inefficiencies and then productivity in an organization. So the key takeaway today that I want to leave you is that doing stand-up, doing retrospective, doing all the different techniques that we've learned, it is important, but being agile is more important. So it is more important to adapt an agile mindset to allow an organization to achieve greater agility than to follow a lot of practices that doesn't really produce value for an organization. So this is the takeaway that I want to leave for you. So thank you. So I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Yannick. Thank you very much for all this information about what Agile is about. So if I may, what I take away from this presentation is that doing Agile can actually be pretty easy, but being Agile is really the difficult part and the challenge that we are faced with. So being Agile is more of a journey. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about how we can really adopt this mindset of being Agile, especially like you mentioned earlier in one of your slides that we have around 19% of people in an organization that do not really know what they are doing about, and that indirectly they are actually doing practicing an Agile methodology.
Yeah, yes, so that's correct. So what we look at is that when an organization starts to implement Agile, so what we spoke before is they start to do sprint, they start to do retrospective, they start to have a daily planning, but they don't have a mindset. Why they don't have a mindset? Because at an enterprise level, so the executives, the leaders hasn't really shared a vision that why are we doing it? What are we trying to achieve? Let's shift the way that we are currently thinking, that the way we used to think. So what happened is that they are having a daily stand-up, but they are not really thinking, okay, why are we having this daily stand-up? So it's very important to have a values. So the values of an organization is we want to delight our customers. We want to have quality in what we do. We want to be able to deploy things faster. We want to develop things faster. So we want to reduce waste in our organization. We believe in reducing waste. So by having that thinking process every day, in every ceremonies, in every task that we are doing, we will start to think. So if we are having a daily stand-up or we are talking to our peers, we start to think, okay, so is that adding value, what I'm talking about? What I'm doing is, am I adding value to the organization, to my customer? So this is why it is really critical to really start at an executive level, to really push down to the team, to really explain. So why are we doing something? And what is the mindset, so that will align with the values of our organization, so that when we have all the different teams in the organization, they are all working together with a different mindset instead of just following a process every day. So this is where we look at. So individual interaction is more important than having processes and tools without really thinking, why are we doing it? So the process is not really helping us to achieve greater agility.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you, for sharing this additional information, about Agile being more of a mindset and a journey, and how, we can get this to be picked up and adopted by people in an organization. So just doing a quick check to see if there are any questions. So I don't see any being posted. So thank you very much, Yannick, for joining us today and being part of our online PMI conference. With this, we come to the end. I'd like to also thank all our online participants. So now I'm going to invite everyone to join track number 1.
Thank you.
And Yannick, yeah.
Thank you. Please join track 1, where we are going to have a closing ceremony.